Hello everyone. Let's learn how to narrow down data of interest within a SQL database. Recall that within a single SQL database, we can store multiple tables. Step number one is going to be about narrowing down to specific table of interest using the from clause. What exactly is a clause? Clauses are parts of SQL queries which will enable you to narrow down specific data of interest. For example, I can say from followed by table name, which is going to be table 3 here. How do we narrow down specific columns of interest? We'll have to use the select clause. For example, I can say select call 1, comma call 3 in order to narrow down to those two columns. How can we narrow down to specific rows within those columns of interest? We are going to use the where clause, which is going to require us to write a condition. The condition associated with the where clause is going to be similar to the condition associated with conditional in Python programming language. The where clause is going to enable us to filter rows which satisfy a specific condition based on a column's value. What does the limit clause enable us to do? It simply limits the number of rows returned by the SQL query. Let's say that, for instance, we are only interested in the top two rows returned by the SQL query. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the fact that we ask you multiple questions as part of the projects which ask for top three of something, bottom five of something. That's where the limit clause will be very useful. The return value is going to be a data frame which is going to have a tabular structure like this. You're going to have two rows, assuming that you're limiting the output of your SQL query to two rows. Let's say that you have details like A, B, C, and D within those rows for column 1 and column 3. You're going to end up with a data frame table which contains those relevant information. Let's learn about putting these clauses together into a SQL query. The basic syntax for a query would be select something from something followed by a semicolon. When you write SQL queries, it's mandatory for you to use a semicolon. In pandas, we can skip mentioning the semicolon because pandas automatically takes care of that for us. That's why in the demo that we covered in the previous video, we did not type a semicolon at the end of each query string. The case and the spacing doesn't matter at all when it comes to queries. We can either have upper cases for the clause keywords or the lower cases. You'll be able to split parts of the query into different lines over here. Let's talk about where those additional clauses go. Examples would be where and limit. After the from clause, you're going to be able to mention those optional additional clauses. Let's talk about what we have to specify along with the from clause. That's going to be the name of the table. An example would be the boarding table. As part of the select clause, we are going to specify the columns of interest. We could specify star, which indicates that we want all of the columns. The query select star from boarding indicates that we want all the columns from the boarding table. Another example would be select route, daily boardings from boarding, which is going to just retrieve the route and the daily boardings column as part of the return data frame. Example of select star from routes would give all the columns from the routes table. Select route underscore URL from routes will just give the route underscore URL column. Let's talk about the optional stuff. We have already discussed about where and limit. Order by just enables us to order the rows within the return value of the query using a specific column's ordering value. It's just sorting. Let's go through examples here. So I'm saying select star from boarding. That's going to select all the columns. Let's say that I only want to select the row entries where the route column has the detail as 80 here. I'm going to do that by typing my condition as route equal to 80, which I have to mention using a where clause. Observe that we are using a single equal to here. That's SQL syntax. Recall that in Python, single equal to refers to assignment and double equal to refers to comparison. Both single equal to and double equal to will work in SQL, but typically a lot of people use single equal to. Let's look at an example for order by. Let's say that we want to order the rows based on the stop ID where all the route information is going to be 80. That's going to create the data frame where you have rows in ascending order based on the stop ID column over here. The default ordering is going to be ascending for order by clause. So how do you specify descending? You'll have to explicitly say order by column name and then DSC, which is the keyword over here. Of course, you could also explicitly specify ASC for ascending, but it is not needed because that's the default ordering. Let's talk about limit example. Let's say that we want to limit the number of rows returned by this SQL query to the top 3. We can do that by typing a limit clause and mentioning 3 as the part that comes after the limit clause. Let's focus on these additional clauses over here, which are where, order by, and limit. You can have any kind of ordering between those. The only clauses for which you need to have fixed order is going to be select and from over here. After that, you can have all of those optional clauses in any particular order. Let me wrap up this video here. In the next video, we are going to go through demo problem 1 and demo problem 2.